In June 2024, ground-penetrating radar detected something 15 feet beneath Stonehenge that completely rewrites everything we thought we knew about this monument. A massive underground structure that's older than the stones themselves. A network of tunnels and chambers that suggests Stonehenge wasn't built on an empty field. It was built on top of something far more complex that was already there. For 4,500 years, archaeologists assume Stonehenge was constructed on virgin ground by Neolithic people who dragged stones from Wales and arranged them in a circle for reasons we still don't fully understand. That assumption just collapsed. The structure beneath the stones predates them by at least 500 years. Whatever was built underground came first. We've been studying Stonehenge backward for centuries. Here's what they found beneath those stones and why it changes everything we thought we understood about ancient Britain. The Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes Project has been scanning the area around Stonehenge since 2010 using ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, and electromagnetic sensors. For over a decade, they mapped hundreds of features: burial mounds, wooden posts, ancient pits. Nothing revolutionary until June 2024, when new scanning technology picked up anomalies directly beneath the stone circle itself. The readings showed a void, a hollow space 15 feet below the surface, extending 30 feet in diameter directly under the central horseshoe of stones. That's not natural geology. Natural caves don't form perfect circular chambers in the chalk bedrock that Stonehenge sits on. This was artificial. Something was carved out of solid rock beneath the most famous monument on Earth, and nobody knew it was there. But here's what made the team realize this was massive. When they expanded the scan pattern, they found the void wasn't isolated. Tunnels extended from the central chamber in 4 directions aligned with the cardinal points: north, south, east, west. Each tunnel ran at least 50 feet before the scans lost resolution. The underground structure beneath Stonehenge is larger than the stone circle above it. The discovery was announced in September 2024 at the European Association of Archaeologists conference in Belfast. The reaction was immediate and divided. Half the archaeological community demanded excavation immediately. The other half argued that disturbing Stonehenge itself was culturally irresponsible. The debate is ongoing, but here's what we know from non-invasive scans. The main void beneath the center of Stonehenge measures roughly 30 feet in diameter and at least 12 feet in height. That's the size of a large room. Not collapsed material or natural formation. Ground-penetrating radar shows clean edges and deliberate shaping. Someone spent enormous effort excavating this chamber from solid chalk bedrock 5,000 years ago. But here's what the scans revealed that nobody anticipated. They're carved with patterns. The radar can't determine exactly what the patterns are, but the signal returns show regular geometric shapes covering significant portions of the chamber walls. Circles, spirals, straight lines, the same symbols that appear on Neolithic passage tombs across Ireland and Scotland. This suggests the chamber wasn't just functional, it was ceremonial or religious. People don't carve elaborate geometric art into utility spaces, they carve it into sacred spaces. Whatever this chamber was used for, it was important enough to justify weeks or months of labor decorating solid rock walls that nobody was supposed to see again once the entrance was sealed. And here's the detail that has archaeologists arguing. The entrance appears to have been deliberately filled and sealed. It's not collapsed. It's packed with stones and earth in a way that suggests intentional closure. Someone built this chamber, used it for something, then sealed it permanently before constructing Stonehenge above it. The question is, why? The 4 tunnels extending from the central chamber run in cardinal directions with precision that's difficult to achieve without modern tools. The north tunnel extends at least 60 feet before scan resolution degrades. The south tunnel goes even farther, possibly connecting to other voids that scans have identified but can't resolve clearly. But here's what makes this extraordinary. These tunnels aren't crawl spaces. They're corridors. The radar returns suggest they're 6 to 8 feet in height and 4 to 5 feet in width. large enough to walk through upright, large enough to move objects or groups of people. This wasn't a drainage system or a symbolic feature. It was built for human use. The east and west tunnels are shorter, but show similar construction, carved through bedrock, deliberately shaped and aligned with astronomical precision. The cardinal alignment isn't accidental. Neolithic people across Europe align monuments with solar and lunar cycles. The tunnels beneath Stonehenge follow the same pattern. Here's the question that nobody can answer yet. Where do these tunnels lead? The scans lose resolution around 70 feet from the central chamber because of interference from the massive sarsen stones above. The tunnels could extend another 50 feet, or they could connect to larger complexes beyond current scan range. Until excavation happens or better technology emerges, we're mapping blind spots around a mystery we didn't know existed 6 months ago. Carbon dating isn't possible without excavation, but geological analysis of the scan data suggests the underground chamber was carved between 3,500 and 3000 BCE. That places it 500 to 1,000 years before the stone circle was erected. The timeline we've used for Stonehenge just became incomplete. Here's what we thought we knew. Stonehenge was built in stages starting around 3000 BCE with a circular earthwork ditch. Around 2500 BCE, the massive sarsen stones were erected in the configuration we see today. The monument evolved over 500 years from simple earthworks to monumental stone architecture. That's the standard timeline taught in every archaeology program. The site was already sacred before the stones arrived. People were using this location for ceremonial or religious purposes centuries before anyone thought to drag 25-ton stones from Wales. Stonehenge wasn't built on an empty ritual landscape. It was built on top of an existing sacred site that had already been in use for generations. This changes everything about why Stonehenge was built where it was. Archaeologists have spent decades debating why Neolithic people chose this specific location. Theories include astronomical alignments, proximity to water sources, or symbolic significance of the landscape. Now we have a simpler answer. They built it there because something important was already there. The location was sacred before the stones. The stones were added to enhance or mark something that predated them. This is where archaeology gets speculative, but the evidence provides clues. The chamber's size, decoration, and deliberate sealing suggest ceremonial use. The tunnel alignments with cardinal directions indicate astronomical or seasonal significance. The location beneath what would become Stonehenge suggests continuity of sacred purpose across centuries. Here's the leading theory among archaeologists studying the scans. The chamber was a passage tomb similar to Newgrange in Ireland or Maeshowe in Scotland. These structures were built across Neolithic Europe as communal burial sites and ceremonial spaces. They typically feature a central chamber accessed by a passage, aligned with solar events like winter solstice, sunrise. The chamber beneath Stonehenge fits this pattern. But here's where it gets more interesting. If it was a passage tomb, where are the remains? Ground-penetrating radar can detect dense organic material like bone. The scans show the chamber is empty. Either it was cleaned out before sealing, or it was never used for burial. That suggests an alternative purpose. The second theory is that it was a ritual chamber for seasonal ceremonies and lunar cycles. A chamber aligned with cardinal directions and decorated with sacred symbols would be ideal for these ceremonies. Groups could enter through the tunnels, conduct rituals in the central chamber, then seal it during certain seasons or after specific events. The third theory is more controversial but gaining support. Some archaeologists suggest the chamber was an astronomical observatory or calendar. The tunnel alignments match solar and lunar positions. If specific dates or celestial events caused sunlight to illuminate the chamber in particular ways, it could have functioned as a sophisticated timekeeping device. Neolithic people were obsessed with tracking time. An underground chamber with perfect cardinal alignments would be an ideal tool for that purpose. This is the question that has archaeologists divided. The chamber was deliberately filled and sealed. not collapsed, not abandoned, intentionally closed and buried. Then, centuries later, people returned to the same location and built the most elaborate stone monument in prehistoric Britain directly above it. Here's what makes this pattern significant. Building over sealed sacred sites is common in religious architecture. Christians built churches over pagan temples. Romans built temples over earlier shrines. The pattern appears across cultures and time periods. When a location is considered sacred, new structures often incorporate or mark the older sacred space beneath them. But here's the unique aspect of Stonehenge. Most overlapping sacred sites show continuous use or at least knowledge of what came before. Stonehenge's builders sealed the chamber so thoroughly that we had no idea it existed for 4,500 years. That's not typical. That's deliberate erasure combined with continued reverence for the location. They wanted the underground structure hidden, but still wanted to mark and use the site above it. The leading explanation is that something happened that made the chamber too dangerous or sacred to access. Perhaps someone died during a ceremony. Perhaps a ritual went wrong. Perhaps the chamber was associated with a religious practice that fell out of favor. Whatever the reason, it needed to be sealed permanently. But the location itself remained sacred, so they marked it with the most massive and enduring monument their civilization could construct. The alternative explanation is more practical. The chamber's purpose was fulfilled. It was used for a specific ritual or astronomical observation that only needed to happen once or over a limited period. Once completed, it was sealed, and Stonehenge was built as a permanent marker of what had been achieved underground. The stone circle wasn't replacing the chamber, it was memorializing it. The geometric patterns carved into the chamber walls are visible on ground-penetrating radar as regular disturbances in the rock surface. Circles, spirals, zigzag lines, and cup marks. These symbols appear on Neolithic monuments across Britain, Ireland, and continental Europe. They're called megalithic art, but nobody knows what they mean. Here's what we do know about these symbols. They're not random decoration. The same patterns appear on sites separated by hundreds of miles and built by cultures that supposedly had no contact. Spirals at Newgrange in Ireland match spirals at Gavrinis in France. Cup and ring marks in Scotland appear identical to those in Portugal. Either these symbols had universal meaning in Neolithic Europe, or there was cultural exchange we haven't detected archaeologically. But here's why the Stonehenge chamber symbols matter. If they match symbols at other sites, we can use comparisons to interpret possible meanings. That suggests local religious practices different from the broader Neolithic culture. Without excavation and direct observation, we can only guess based on radar patterns. But the fact that they exist at all tells us the chamber was sacred enough to justify elaborate decoration that took immense labor to create. Some researchers suggest the symbols are maps. Others think they're astronomical notations. The dominant theory is that they're religious or mythological symbols representing gods, spirits, or cosmological concepts. We're essentially looking at a 5,000-year-old religious text written in a language we don't speak carved into walls we can't see without digging up the most protected archaeological site in Britain. For centuries, Stonehenge has been studied as an isolated monument, a massive undertaking by Neolithic people who dragged stones from impossible distances and arranged them with astronomical precision for reasons we debate endlessly. The monument was the mystery. Now we know the monument is only half the story. Here's what the underground structure reveals. Stonehenge wasn't a beginning. It was a continuation. The site was already sacred for at least 500 years before the first stone was erected. Whatever religious or ceremonial practices happened in the underground chamber, they established the location's importance. The stone circle came later as a permanent marker, a memorial or an enhancement of rituals that began underground. But here's the bigger implication. If Stonehenge has a massive underground component we didn't discover until 2024, what else are we missing at other sites? Newgrange has been excavated for decades. Avebury is thoroughly studied. The Ring of Brodgar in Scotland has been surveyed extensively. Has anyone looked beneath them with modern ground-penetrating radar? The Stonehenge discovery suggests that we might be studying surfaces while the real significance lies underground at sites across Britain and Europe. The discovery also explains some oddities about Stonehenge that never made sense before. Why this specific location? Why such massive effort for a monument in the middle of nowhere? Why the astronomical alignments that seem to reference events and cycles beyond what a simple calendar would require? The answer might be that Stonehenge wasn't starting from scratch. It was building on foundations and traditions that were already ancient when the stones arrived. The archaeological community is divided on excavation. One faction argues that the chamber must be explored to understand its purpose and verify what scans suggest. The other faction argues that Stonehenge is too culturally significant to disturb. Digging beneath the stones could damage them. Opening the sealed chamber could destroy whatever remains inside. But here's the compromise being discussed. Advanced robotics and fiber optic cameras could potentially access the chamber through small boreholes that wouldn't disturb the stone circle. Drill down 15 feet. Insert a camera system, map the interior without large-scale excavation. This technology exists. Whether it will be approved for use at Stonehenge is a political and cultural decision more than an archaeological one. The British government and English Heritage, which manages Stonehenge, have issued statements saying the site's protection is the priority. Translation: excavation is unlikely anytime soon. The scans will be studied. Papers will be published. Debates will continue. But unless technology improves dramatically or cultural attitudes shift, we might be looking at decades before anyone enters that chamber. Here's the frustrating reality for archaeology enthusiasts. The most significant discovery about Stonehenge in a century is sitting 15 feet underground, and we might not see inside it during our lifetimes. The same cultural reverence that preserved Stonehenge for 4,500 years is now preventing us from understanding what lies beneath it. We found something extraordinary, and we've collectively decided to leave it buried. A massive underground chamber. A network of tunnels aligned with cardinal directions. Walls decorated with sacred symbols. All of it built centuries before Stonehenge existed. Then deliberately sealed and buried before the stone circle was erected on top of it. This isn't just a new discovery about an old monument. It's evidence that Neolithic Britain was far more sophisticated than we imagined. They weren't just stacking stones in fields, they were carving elaborate underground complexes, conducting ceremonies we can only guess at, and maintaining religious traditions across centuries that required sealing sacred spaces and building new monuments to mark them. Stonehenge has been studied for 900 years since the first written descriptions appeared in medieval texts. It's been excavated, surveyed, dated, and analyzed by generations of archaeologists. And we miss the fact that there's an entire hidden structure beneath it that's older than the stones themselves. What else have we missed? What other fully understood ancient sites are we studying backward because we haven't looked beneath them? The chamber under Stonehenge isn't just changing what we know about one monument. It's changing how we need to approach every ancient site where we think we have the full picture. The stones above are impressive. The chamber below is revolutionary. And it was sitting there the entire time, waiting for someone to look.